Good morning. I just want to offer you some words of encouragement. I actually think we're at the point in this retreat where that's all you need. Probably you have enough information, maybe more than you need. And each of us all have whatever the conditioning is that keeps us from seeing the way things actually are and being completely free from all dukkha, all suffering. And so that's what we're working towards, of course. I don't know if I even like saying it that way, but the working part. But making that shift both requires facing whatever misunderstanding we have about Dhamma and letting go into awakening. And there are all kinds of things that might be holding us back. One might be the idea that somehow we can't do it, or that it's far away, so one way to work with that is to remember that many people throughout history, since the time of the Buddha, have awakened, and they weren't so different from us. I find it inspiring when I read the suttas and I see how people were thinking and the kinds of things that they were worried about and the kinds of things they were having trouble with, and it's the same stuff we have. And sometimes, we can think there's a particular thing that we have trouble getting through. And we may feel like it's an insurmountable barrier. But if we hear about someone who's also had that challenge and they were able to overcome it, it can really help. Or even just a person who looks like us or has similar qualities. I think it's why it's so important to remember that lay people got enlightened, monastics got enlightened, people who came from all different strata of society, people with different abilities, different backgrounds. And it's still happening today. Some of the people that we know of, usually the stories about them don't get told until after they die, because declaring that someone was enlightened to this or that degree while they're alive has a little bit of a different edge to it. Anyway, the point is, you can do it. And one of the stories that you might have heard before, I'm not sure, about someone who seemed like a pretty hopeless case at the time of the Buddha, was this monk named Culapanthaka. And his brother got ordained and eventually became an arahant. And Culapanthaka also wanted to follow in his brother's footsteps, and he got ordained. And his brother was teaching him the Dhamma. But Culapanthaka just couldn't really learn it. He couldn't memorize even 4 lines of teaching, in months of trying. And his brother, who I don't think was an arahant at that time yet, said to him, you're just not really getting it. I think you should go back to lay life. And that made Culapanthaka feel so sad. It says that he was at the gate of the monastery crying. And the Buddha came by and he said, what's wrong? And Culapanthaka told him that he can't memorize, he can't remember. And the Buddha said, I've got a way that you can, a method for you. It was kind of like the Buddha had methods for all of us. And he gave Culapanthaka a foot wiping cloth. It was clean and white. And he told Culapanthaka to focus on removing impurities. Just, by having this cloth. So Culapanthaka was rubbing the cloth and thinking about removing impurities. And then he saw that his hands rubbing the cloth were making the white cloth dirty. And when he saw that, his mind opened up and he realized impermanence. And this is what brought him to enlightenment. And the story, as the story goes, and he wrote about this, or he has these verses in the Therigatha, and he said that there was this meal offering that was happening for all the monks. And his brother was the one who was in charge of arranging the meal offering, to say how many monks were coming. And he didn't count his brother because he thought his brother was kind of on his way back home. So the Buddha and all the other monks get to the house of where this meal offering is, and the Buddha realizes that Culapanthaka is not there. And he doesn't accept the meal, he just waits. And then they say to him, well, okay, it's time for the meal. And the Buddha said, there's one monk missing. And so Culapanthaka is back at the monastery, and he's enlightened. And not only that, these psychic powers came to him, and he created 1,000 replicas of himself, this power of the mind-made body. And they're all cleaning the monastery. Don't you wish you could do that? And so there's a monk that gets sent back to find him, and he goes and he sees all these Culapanthakas, and he doesn't know which one is the one. And goes back to the Buddha and he says, "There's all these monks there, and I don't know." He said, "Go back and say Culapanthaka's name and ask which one is him." And okay, so when he goes back and he asks for Culapanthaka, then Culapanthaka comes with him, and they go to the meal, and then the Buddha accepts the meal. And so Culapanthaka was this very amazing, obviously very amazing arahant. And there's a story about, all the monks had to take turns to teach the bhikkhunis. And when it was Culapanthaka's turn, he would just say the same thing over and over. And then the bhikkhunis are like, oh, it's his turn again. We're not going to get anything out of this. So the bhikkhunis are kind of like, ugh. So Culapanthaka comes and he's saying the same thing over and over. Ayya, do you remember what he was saying? I can't remember the phrase. Something about impermanence. Same phrase over and over. And he realizes that they're just kind of like bored. So he levitates and he's walking back and forth in the air saying this phrase, and they're like, ah, I get it. So you never know what's going to happen in your practice. Well, we have to go into it without expectations. Certainly, Culapanthaka didn't have any expectations rubbing the cloth. It's just following the Buddha's advice. And when thoughts come up about, well, whatever, whether it's some idea that we can't do it, or some hindrance comes up, ill will or boredom, aversion, restlessness, worry, some memory from the past, whatever it is, and know that this is just a temporary barrier, that it's up to us to uproot. And to not be discouraged by the fact that it comes back again and again. It's just old karma. It's just old conditioning. Don't take it personally. Don't identify with it. Just know that the task is to really uproot it, like you're weeding. Do you ever have any really difficult weeds to pull out by the root, to get the whole root, Dandelions, thistles, if you pull them a certain way, you just get the tops. And that's going to be back in another week or two. But if you really, the way you grab it and the way you work with it, sometimes you can just get the whole root. And the Buddha talks about this. We have to uproot greed, hatred, and delusion. The whole thing, the whole plant. And okay, if it breaks off and we don't get it all this time, that's okay. It's going to come back and then we can do it again. And at some point, the whole root is going to come. And you'll be free from suffering. And maybe you won't be completely free right away. That's okay. But every glimpse of Nibbana, every time we make some progress, like, something really falls away. Some old belief we've had that doesn't accord with Dhamma, or an insight into the Dhamma that brings about relief. And we make that part of our jewels that we use, or whatever inspiring collection of inspiring recollections that we can use to encourage us further. And as one of the beneficial reflections is to think about what you've experienced so far, whether it's some generosity experience or some insight or a teaching that really touched your heart, or knowing that you're living a virtuous life, or thinking about your good friends that also are focused on developing on the path. Anything and everything that you have in your experience that encourages you, make use of that to lift up the heart.